Yeah, you can have that in any club, right? But one person's prestige is another person's ho-hum, right? I mean, that's in the prestige is in the eyes of the beholder. In the immigrant neighborhoods, the Lower East Side in the United States a century ago, people would buy tickets for the high holiday services, not because that was something that the synagogue to support the annual membership, but because it was a cantor that they wanted to hear. And the synagogues would hire cantors, especially for the high holidays, because they knew they could sell tickets, right? Well, I mean, that's a different kind of, that's a whole different kind of thing. But once you get into a marketplace where there are goods and services available for sale, you know, that's a very interesting line of work. But just because it's for sale doesn't automatically make it religious, right? If you go to the high holiday service, you bought a ticket to hear the cantor, that's just like going to the opera, right? A concert. That's not religion. But if the cantor is inspirational and you participate in the services and you bring to it the right kind of kavanah and intent, you can get a lot of religious expression out of it. And that's a good example of two different people in the same place at the same time having different experiences. The individual has to make the religious experience. And your religious experience attending that service will differ according to whether you are the only person there to pray and everybody else is there for the concert, or whether everybody's there to pray and the concert merely is enhancing. It's a different experience. I want to go from production now to investment, because investment is really important. And we have two kinds of investment here. We have investment in people, and we have investment in institutions. So first I want to talk about investment in people, which is to say human capital. And we talk about religious human capital. Human capital can be religious in general, or it can be religion specific, it can be synagogue specific, right? Human capital, when we talk about this in Judaism, we talk about skills, all the things we learn in Hebrew school, right? We study Torah, but we also study Hebrew, right? Those of us who aren't Israeli have to learn Hebrew in Hebrew school. And that's it's called Hebrew school because the language is such an important, fundamental part of what a Jew is supposed to be able to function with. We learn language, we learn history, we learn the holidays, and the holidays are usually vehicles for teaching language and history and customs, and we learn the liturgy. There's a lot of human capital that we learn in skills in the form of knowledge. But we also acquire human capital through experience, right? No matter how much of a Jewish education you might have, if you go to the synagogue every week, you acquire experiences that you then bring to your subsequent religious activities that make a difference. A person who goes to the synagogue once a year and to attend a bar mitzvah has a whole different experience at that service than the person who goes every week. It's just a different kind of thing because the person who goes every week has acquired human capital through that experience. It's not necessarily extra knowledge. You're familiar with the prayers, you're familiar with the songs, you're familiar with the people perhaps, and with the order of the service, and familiarity gives you a different kind of skill. And then there's memories, right? Your childhood memories from your home. How did you celebrate the holidays in the home? Were your Jewish experiences comforting or threatening, right? Were they warm or were they cold, right? These kinds of memories build up, and we all have memories of all kinds. Some of them direct, of our own experiences. Some of them are indirect, what we read about. Is the Holocaust part of our our Jewish human capital? Well, the Holocaust experience is, even for those of us who did not experience the Holocaust, because we learn about it, because we meet people who have experienced it, and because it's part of our Jewish consciousness. So all of it, human capital is everything that's you that you weren't born with, right? That you had to learn. And this religious human capital is extremely important in Judaism. And the more human capital you have, the more efficient you are in using your time to produce religious expression. That's what human capital does. That's what skills do. They make you more efficient. For a given amount of time and money that you put into a production process, you get more output if you're more skilled. And that's exactly what happens when we're talking about religious skills. For any religion, but Judaism is a particularly skill-intensive religion. The book is central, right? And Jewish experience is central. To the point where we often have a competition between our goals for our children, between religious education and general education. We want them to have both, right? But there's only a limited amount of time. Sometimes there's a limited amount of money as well, but usually it's time that dominates when you're talking about high school students and what are they going to learn and how are you going to invest in human capital. I can't emphasize how much this is of concern at a practical level to Jewish families, but what happens is that as a people, as a group, as innovators, what we've tried to do is we find ways to make our Jewish human capital and our general human capital complementary. And this is what the sociologists refer to responding to your social environment, or sort of, but you want complementarity. You're one person, so you want all these different skills that you're learning to be mutually consistent. You don't want them to conflict with each other. And if possible, you want to develop synergies between them. So what we see people doing is they'll emphasize those aspects of Jewish human capital that are most complementary to the general human capital that they want to have, and vice versa. They will choose occupations where the skills that they need are most complementary to their Jewish skills. And so you see, for example, I think Professor Eckstein spoke to this group at one point about Jewish merchants. Once Jews, as part of their religious training, became literate in a world where very few other people were literate, then they had a comparative advantage in occupations that required literacy. And vice versa. If you're training for an occupation that requires literacy and that assumes literacy and sophistication in matters of history, geography, and literature, then that affects the way in which you study Judaism. The Hebrew school curriculum in the United States differs dramatically from the Hebrew training of the Jews of the shtetls a century and a half ago, because in the United States, when you go to Hebrew school, it is assumed that you are literate in English, that you can learn a second language without difficulty, that you understand the study of history and geography well enough so that we can give you a textbook